Hello, thank you. So I'm Kirsty, I'm exec producer with Anagram. I am slightly terrified by all of this and losing my voice, so do bear with me. So I'm going to talk to you about Anagram and our recent VR work, Goliath, and where we're going next. And a massive thank you as well to KIKK for having me and for putting on such incredible speakers. So we are Anagram. We are a creative studio specialising in interactive storytelling and immersive experience design. We have made award-winning work that spans AR, VR, and immersive theatre. We've got a background in documentary film, animation, interactive game design, and we're kind of known for specialising in exploiting the most recent advances in immersive technologies to create engaging stories. And so Anagram was formed 10 years ago by May Abdallah and Amy Rose, and May and Amy is where the Anagram name comes from. And they were formerly documentary makers who were looking to create work that puts the audiences right at the heart of the experience and gives them a bit more agency with what they're doing. And so they took the seed of an idea with them to the groundbreaking and ever-brilliant artist group Blast Theory, and that's where Anagram started. And it's also how I met them. I was business director with Blast Theory at the time. So we are not tech people. We're feeling our way through the story and what you can do to make the story feel like it's something that you really remember in your skin. And that piece enables a sort of imaginative leap. And so for us, immersive work is all about crossing the gulfs of the absurd to create lasting impact. And while we do look to new forms of technology, it's not the technology itself that matters. It's the way that you develop and conceive the experience and then use the technology most appropriate to the story and considering what the affordances of that technology might be. And so we often structure our works in a way that contributes to the audience essentially living a question, which is the central question of the piece. So these are some pictures of works that we've previously made. So the one over here with the rope is Door into the Dark, and this was an immersive experience about what it means to be lost in the age of infinite information. And you are blindfolded throughout this experience and follow the rope to guide your route. The Palace's Machines, I think was frankly quite a bonkers one-night party that celebrated the limits of the flesh and the wonders of metal. And then moving on here, we've actually got this piece touring in Saudi Arabia soon, and it's a two-person experience called the Collider, where only one of you has the VR headset, and you're taken on a narrative journey that explores your personal relationship with power. This one here is A Face to Open Doors, which is an immersive installation that imagines a not-too-distant future where AI is introduced into the process of deciding on who and who should not be granted asylum. And then finally, over here is a piece called Messages to a Post-Human Earth. It's an AR piece that takes inspiration from the Polish science fiction writer Stanislaw Lem and also plant intelligence. And so it's a sci-fi work in a park for two people, and you're ostensibly asked what message you would leave behind for future inhabitants of the planet. And so these are some of the core questions that we consider when we're making a piece of work. So where and when? So context is everything. How will this piece be experienced and when? How does somebody enter and leave the experience? And then what do I do? So in immersive, the body always speaks, and it's important for us to consider both how and why, and that's sort of by design and kind of also bearing in mind natural human behavior. And what do I touch? So the symbolism of objects. Everything you experience becomes part of the piece, so we design the moments of touch really carefully. And all of those elements are really leading to the kind of core preoccupation for us, which is like, what is it really about? What is the question that we're asking of the audience? And how do all the elements of the piece get them to live that question and to embody it through active participation? And so for us, cracking that is really the most important thing for our interactive work. And so what I'm going to focus on for a lot of this talk is Goliath. And so this is our recent VR piece, Goliath Playing with Reality. So Goliath is a 25-minute animated VR documentary that celebrates the power of gaming in the face of mental illness. And it's a story about a guy called John and his journey with a diagnosis of schizophrenia. So his experience of being isolated and how gaming changed his life. And gaming, for us, became a way to talk about the unreality of psychosis. And so I'm going to show you the trailer now, I think.
Can you tell the difference between what is and isn't real? When the one thing that links you to the outside world disappears, where does that leave you?
Schizophrenia is not a proven illness. It's something that I understand that you can't tell what's real and what isn't real.
Everything you see is just part of the game.
A distortion.
Everything you feel is real.
Oh, thank you. It's very kind, thank you. So in Goliath, you are guided by the voice of John, who you just heard there, and he's the man behind Goliath. So John takes you on a journey of how psychosis makes it really difficult to tell what the difference is between what is and isn't real. And the experience follows his story and incorporates gameplay and interactive elements throughout. And Goliath is a really important passion project for us. The main protagonist, John, is the brother of the director's close friend. And John had been institutionalized in a mental health institution for 8 years. When he came out, his brother just said that he didn't recognize him anymore from his time being there and from the medication that he was on. And then he heard his brother playing online gaming, and it was at that point that he could hear his brother being himself again, just chatting and laughing. And what was happening is that John was building a community, but one that sat outside the physical realm, where he was not constrained by the social judgments put on his diagnosis. And so for us, this was like very much the starting point of the project and the reason that we chose VR to tell that story. Because making VR is hard and it can be quite expensive. And so it was important for us to tell a story that really needed to be told in that medium. And so this is a story about someone living in a virtual reality, and there's real value in seeing the inside of that experience. And obviously, because you're in a headset too, the experience also asks you to reflect on your own interpretation of how you were working out what is and isn't real. And by using the power of what VR actually does. So I'm not sure how many people have experienced Goliath, but for those that have, you'll know there's a few moments in it where we're kind of using the tool to occasionally trick the mind into thinking that you're somewhere else. So this picture here is John on his Twitch channel, so with his friends, and this was kind of an early animated mock-up of that. So we felt really responsible for John. We didn't want to portray the wrong kind of experience of living with psychosis. We actively sought to break stigma. And this was a guiding force for us throughout the script writing, production, and through to the marketing. And schizophrenia, as you may be aware, is a condition that is really poorly understood, and you'll definitely be aware, is badly portrayed in cinema. And the links between violence and schizophrenia is really overemphasized in the media, making it even more of an isolating diagnosis for people to have. And so when we were building Goliath and building the prototype, we did a lot of workshopping with Mind, UCL, McPin Foundation, who work within patient health. And we interviewed people who have lived experience of schizophrenia. And this was really an important part of the research that would feed into the project. And influenced by the workshops, I'm going to show you a short clip from the experience. This is quite early on, where you've got some interaction that demonstrates kind of the noise that's out there about the diagnosis and about schizophrenia.
As a result of the outside pressures, yes.
Now, I'd also...
Well, I'd like to go further now to say that I do recognize the difference between myself and other people in some respects.
A distortion. So if I have a headache, the pain is like drilling inside of my head. It feels like a nail. So I need to go get a hammer. Now I sound like a crazy person. But if you go back to the original thought, it makes sense.
And so following these workshops, we knew that we had a strong tool for showing the power of digital connection and breaking down barriers to physical perception. We also really didn't want to make a sob story. We wanted to invite you to question if you always know what side of real you are on. It's about reality, it's about perception, it's about a man who is a gamer who also suffers psychosis. And the fact that Goliath, John, is now a hero in his own world, in the Twitch community and online gaming, it felt like we could also celebrate something that's become relevant to all of us during lockdown or since lockdown. So that's the virtual experience of digital connection and what it means for people that are outside of what is considered to be normal. And John talks on his Twitch channel that we saw before with people from all over the world, and has actually become a massive beacon of support for other people online living with other disabilities and diagnoses, and you hear about that later in the experience. So these are just some of the kind of game characters. Some of them will be familiar to you for playing games that we kind of incorporated into the work. And this, I messed this slide up. Things were moving around and shooting, and somehow I stopped that, so apologies for that. But these are some of the earlier models of what you now see in the experience. And so going from that earlier bit where you're kind of overwhelmed with the noise that's out there around the diagnosis, we then kind of veer the experience into the story of John and John's story. And we get a sense of what happened to him and where he is now. So the next clip is John introducing himself, and it's in stark contrast to the early noise of information that you heard. And it's John that you mainly hear throughout the experience, apart from one person who we'll talk about soon.
Schizophrenia is not a proven illness. They name you that because they can't explain anything else about you. They call you schizophrenic. It's something that I understand and everyone won't. People call me Goliath. I'm a gamer. It's the gaming and the streaming that saved me. Every game is doing something that's impossible to do in real life. No one wants to lose. Everyday life, you don't want to lose, do you? Sometimes you don't have control, but you do it in a game.
So VR, a lot of people think of it as the empathy machine, whereas we think it's more apt to say that it's a bewilderment machine. It can be quite daunting to people, and it can take a bit of getting used to. So when you're in VR, you're constantly trying to navigate a leap between the mind of the audience and the expectations of what happens next. And so it's really important to take people by the hand through this, and they will go with you, as long as you have a guide for that journey. And we were really privileged to be able to work with Tilda Swinton to be that guide. So Tilda gives you the kind of narration throughout the piece, kind of the directive narration, onboards and offboards you through the experience. And she's essentially your kind of, the gap between your sensations and reality and the context, kind of bridging you through the experience. And the next clip is the onboarding scene, or a small section of it where Tilda's getting used to the journey, to the, what are these called, controllers.
Now, feel the weight of your hands. Squeeze them gently. You can see them here. You can feel them there. But where are they really?
So it was obviously a real honour to work with Tilda, and she was brilliant and really engaged with the story, but also the kind of form of telling that story. And so in the experience, you're following John's story, and it's bookended, like I said, with Tilda, who is playing Echo, the narrator, throughout the experience. And so for us, Goliath was a long time to make. It was largely created in the pandemic, and it took a lot of energy. And so by the end of it, we were all pretty burnt out, to be honest. But following the production, we were really excited about the launch and quite nervous. And so we launched it at Venice Film Festival, where it won Best VR Work, and on the Meta Store. I'm just really milking this image from when everybody had their hair and makeup done. And so the release on the Meta Store was for us the real nail-biting stuff. And so from the outset, we knew we had to be really clear with people that Goliath is not a game, even though it focuses on gaming. And to be really clear with people, because that's often what they would expect from the platform. So we thought we were clear. We thought we were really, really clear. And so when the first review came in, what's the point of this story? I thought it would be an online game, but it turns out to be a story. So we were pretty gutted, and this is one of the hard things we found about navigating VR and a lot of immersive works is people's perceptions of it obviously, often fitting into well-versed genres. And the thing that we learn repeatedly in these situations is just to not intervene and let the audiences comment. People will often step in to kind of defend your work. And so after this moment of fear, we received really incredible feedback from audiences and were inundated with 4- and 5-star reviews. And I say this not just to gloat, but to really talk up to the depth of the comments that we received from people. And so we had one reviewer, for example, on the Quest store that stated, "I am Goliath. All that he experienced, I intimately understood. As an Afghanistan war veteran, I have too found myself immersed in gaming as a way to regain my sanity. It's the only way I feel connected to humanity. Thank you for this." And we received several similar messages to this. There were people that really just enjoyed it as an experience and people that found it as a useful tool for understanding psychosis or for sharing their experience of psychosis or similar diagnoses. And I think one of the other things that was a particularly proud moment for us is that through the process of making this work and being involved in the production and from the launch is that John himself actually felt comfortable to leave the house and meet people in real life. And that was the first time he'd done that in years. So we set up a Discord channel. This was to invite audiences to share and speak with us and others about their experience. And this was an early part of our kind of marketing strategy and trying to build a community. And we still have this channel live now, and we're still talking to people actively about the project. And I would just say that this was a really, really great way for us to have those conversations. So if it's something you're thinking about doing, I would recommend it. So since its launch in 2021, Goliath has been shown at over 30 festivals and venues worldwide and has won numerous awards and a recent Emmy nomination. There are a couple of slides where you can tell that it had an iPhone 6S and was being very stubborn about upgrading. And this is one of those pictures. So when exhibiting outside of the festival circuit, we can take certain key considerations when we're designing the build and the presentation. So we always have an onboarding and offboarding space so that people can come in, talk to people about the experience, get briefed on the work, and then come back for somewhere to speak about the work afterwards. And we have the front of house team briefed for this as well, and they've tried the experience and come to us with questions too. And because we know that a lot of people might not have tried VR before, we tried to design a set that kind of drew from the animation that was in the experience to kind of create a bit of a fun, expanded game world. And it's pretty simple. It's a real pain to rate around, but it's a really simple way of getting people to come over and talk about the experience and to give it a go. And that's just another experience. It's another iPhone 6 picture here. So we work closely with the venues to curate the experience for their audiences. And it's often around form or topic, so it could be presented in quite versatile environments. And so, for example, we curated a series of films about psychosis that were kind of well-presented films about psychosis with the BFI in London, and we were also part of a collective VR exhibition with the Phi Centre in Montreal. And this is, the reason I put this in here is this is Goliath. It's this venue here, this black box is called Box, and it's in the Wales Millennium Centre. And the thing that I think is quite exciting about this is it sits in the atrium of a kind of theatre, contemporary theatre, performance, music, comedy space. So it's a way of kind of bringing people into immersive experiences and to try it out initially. So it's just a really good way of kind of luring the audience in. We also work with venues to reversion Goliath into different formats. So this is a bespoke projection-mapped interactive experience at Oasis in Montreal. It's taken the whole experience but kind of expanded out on the walls and has interactive floors as well. And this just enabled us to kind of creatively try something new. It's something we want to be doing in the future, is looking how we can get more people to experience these things and just new ways of presenting this kind of work. And this is just a bit of it moving. This was kind of their early setup of it. So you can get a sense of what that looks like. So Goliath launched 2 years ago, and after the initial launch of Goliath, we're really happy to say that it's still going strong and in kind of new ways that we hadn't expected at the beginning. So going back to those early workshops that I mentioned, when we ran with people with lived experience of psychosis, at the time we asked people, you know, where should we put this work? Like, who do you want to see this work? Where is it best placed? And the answer was always quite unanimously, we want our doctors to see it, we want people in the medical industry to see it, we feel like they treat us not as people, but as diagnosis. And that was echoed by a lot of mental health charities that we spoke to and medical professionals that we met. And then following that, we were kind of asked by a lot of medical professionals if they could show this to their staff as a way of training. And so we are currently in the midst of creating Inside Mental Health. And so this builds really on the recognition of the power of VR as a training tool. So Inside Mental Health is an immersive resource that takes Goliath and expands it with a physical toolkit that guides users through one-to-one sessions, during which the participants' biometric data is captured in real time. The results of that data is then shared with them, providing insights and used to facilitate a session focused on their experience and responses to the work. So evidence suggests that VR is an effective medium for educating students on complex subjects due to its ability to shut out the viewer's physical reality and focus their attention on the virtual world. And in addition, we think the experience is designed in a way that empowers viewers to feel connected to shared human experience and develop empathy and compassion for themselves. And we've kind of worked quite a lot with various professionals and really believe that could be a way of improving patient treatment and also anticipate there being positive implications, reduction in staff burnout, absences, and improvement in productivity. So with this piece, we have a real goal to improve compassion and care. We've got 100, we've taken the project, to 100 healthcare workers, including doctors, training nurses, occupational therapists, and medical students. And we've set up a working group that includes people with lived experience, medical education specialists and impact evaluators to design an empathy workshop that expands the learning offer of the project and allows it to reach more professionals across the UK and the US in the kind of first instance. And so I just wanted to read this quote from Dr. James Harrison, who is an associate medical director for the North Middlesex Hospital in the UK. And he said, "Through doing this experience, I can see that I have very fixed ideas about mental health and schizophrenia. This is going to make me reappraise those assumptions and help me relate to patients going through that." And so we're early stages of this. We're working with 3 UK grants at the moment on a 2-year research project. So hopefully next time you see me or somebody else from Anagram, there'll be kind of more updates on this. It's a bit weird that you can just hear me slurping. Sorry about that. Okay, so now what? So Goliath surprised us by showing us a clear purpose for how immersive storytelling can be used to communicate something that is invisible. And after a decade of Anagram working in immersive, finding something that really brought us a clear use of storytelling in this form, excited us immensely. And so we're building on that. And so we're now working on the Playing with Reality collection. This is an AI-generated image. I feel like I'm connected to other people now. So the Playing with Reality collection brings together a range of experiences across immersive platforms using first-person narrative and thought-provoking gameplay to take participants inside the mind of a number of real-life characters who have learned to cope with being different. So taking an expansive and artistic approach, looking at the personal experience and societal stigma, the future will see us working on pieces around body image and addiction, but right now we're working on a piece about ADHD. So Impulse is a groundbreaking mixed reality experience that playfully explores what it means to live with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, and how we process the world around us. Similarly to psychosis, ADHD is deeply misunderstood, and right now it's something that we obviously hear a lot about through kind of TikTok memes and through celebrities being diagnosed at various stages. But at the same time, there's still really a lot of debate about whether it's real, whether people are using it as an excuse, or perhaps it's just a fad. And one of the things that we found when researching is that in studies in the UK and in the US, 40% of people in prison are found to have ADHD. So there are a lot of real-life consequences to neurological condition and it not being diagnosed early or properly understood. And so in creating this piece, we again held in-depth interviews with over 50 people with ADHD, with a diagnosis of ADHD, to help us paint a visceral internal portrait of living with the condition. And one of the kind of key things that we found is that attention deficit just doesn't ring true. It's actually not the absence of attention. It's an attention to everything, an overwhelming onslaught of awareness that creates an appearance of constant distraction. And so for that, we felt mixed reality was kind of the perfect medium. It's where a lot of the VR headsets are moving, and it enables us to kind of map onto your real world, the kind of virtual space. So of over 50 interviews, we chose 4 individuals to focus on, and this is Errol, Omar, Leanne, and Tara. These are, again, early mock-ups of the characters. We really wanted the characters to be human and captivating in different ways. In each of these real-life stories, narrated in first person, each person's life gets overtaken by a choice, which then informs their fate. So we want to look at, what happens when we slow down those decisions and understand them across time and space. Do things start to happen differently? And the experience sets out to get under the skin of why we act the way we do. A key feature of ADHD is impulsivity, and then deep regret, compassion, confusion are their own ability to control their behavior. And so these are just, again, some early mock-ups because we're kind of deep in production at the moment. But this one will get a sense of some of the things we're playing with in mixed reality of how you're kind of mapping things on the space, which later I think at the moment is becoming a gameplay scene. So with this experience, we start inside the brain as Echo, who is Tilda Swinton, is back, begins to challenge us to think about how we think, what our senses, with our senses overtaken by the machine we're wearing on our heads, we are shown the mind is also a mysterious machine, one that we are learning about more in every instant. And again, we've been working with neuroscientists and behavioral neurologists at the very forefront of this field, and looking at how we bring your brain into your environment. And using gameplay, kind of reward systems and pressure, we game your brain into using different paths before your very eyes. We have full body interactions in this one to sort of bring you more into the game. I'm really trying to play with how you process and interpret your own space around you. And it's a visceral lesson for us in the power of our impulsive brains. So this is a journey into your own mind. It's brought alongside moments from the lives of our characters, spoken in their own words and dramatized in playful animation that melds into your room. And we're really keen on gameplay. It really encourages you to help them through their own paths, and in doing so, create your own, which we hope will reveal something about you. And we generally think that from people doing this experience, there's going to be a lot more kind of diagnosis, people going to get themselves diagnosed and having reflections on their own behavior too. So like I said, we're deep in production, and we will launch it in spring next year. We really hope that you get to experience it and Goliath and take away with you a new perspective on your reality and that of others. And I have nervously spoke very fast. So that's me 10 minutes early, so please enjoy a longer break, and thank you for listening.